All right, guys, welcome back. This is episode 5 of season 2 of the Hold the Standard podcast. And in this episode, we're talking to my former mentor in the gym owner world, Andy Petranek. It's a very special episode to me. You'll hear Andy talk about his experience with Zen meditation, his reflection on challenging situations throughout his life. And I just want to add like a personal perspective here about Andy. I mean, there's so much to say about him. He's a very dear friend to me still to this day, because of how he shows up in the world. So what was true about Andy when I first met him is actually even more true to this day. He's one of these people who is a true explorer. And he has this rare ability to seek depth and mastery in craft while simultaneously not being defined by it. So like when he was younger, he was a musician, he played the trumpet, but also somehow like the least typical musician you've ever met. He was a Marine officer, but like you'd never know it. He's the least typical Marine you've ever met. And he owned those titles. Like he was legit, but they didn't own him. And that has stayed with me. As the kids would say, he didn't make it his whole personality. And so when I meet him in like the fitness world, everybody's making this their whole personality. So for you guys, highly passionate pursuits, like the ones you are going to hear about often on the Hold the Standard podcast, they often come with this common pitfall. And if you think about it, like going deep almost always comes with a trade-off. When you're in the nitty-gritty of a specific type of greatness, there's not a lot of time or real context to see like the forest for the trees, so to speak. You kind of get lost in the sauce. But Andy never did that. And chances are many of you that are listening right now are vulnerable to what we call in our developmental culture subjectivity. Okay, in some ways, we're all subject to our own reality in some way. And as a result, we're sort of affected by things that are outside of our awareness. They're in our blind spots. If you've heard me talk about this, you've heard me say this a lot. The David Foster Wallace commencement speech, which is called "This is Water," probably illustrates what I'm about to say as best as anything I've ever seen. And what we're talking about is the subject-object shift.
There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?"
Don't get me wrong. There is so much good in being great at, being a musician or being a Marine, being an athlete, being a business owner, all these things that Andy was. But what I'm here to say is what's better is to also know what you're swimming in. So the more that you can make your reality objective, you can make that shift from what is subject to you, make it objective, the more you can bring into your awareness. And this is going to be a massive key in having greater agency over your reality, which sort of sounds a lot like leadership. So obviously Andy's been super profound in my life. I really hope you enjoy this conversation with the one and only Andy Petranek. Thanks for coming on the show, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
I actually enjoy starting in peculiar places with this podcast thing. So just kind of the 1-inch frame. I want to ask you about something very specific, probably something that you wouldn't expect. And context, I think that as much as I'm really excited and eager to talk about what you got going on right now, it would probably help a little bit to color some of like how we know each other and the past and your past and how we can get to there in an artful way. So what I want to ask you about is, will you tell me about Bill Jordan?
No, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Bill Jordan.
And the reason why I'm asking you is because it's a very specific way to help me convey to the folks that are listening to us what it was like being mentored by you. Because as a young person who didn't know anything about anything, I came in and met you on the recommendation of someone else, and I'm sure we'll get into the story more detailed. But then there's these parts of you that are very disconfirming to what I thought Johnny, gym owner, would be doing, be around, interested in, etc. Mm-hmm. And so I think Bill Jordan's just an interesting one.
That's a good, interesting starting point. I would never have thought of that. Bill, I think he still holds the record at the old gym for the most number of pull-ups. I think he did like 60 pull-ups, and he was 57 when he did it.
Can you describe a little bit about what he looks like too?
He's a little guy. Really little guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like 5'6". Yeah. He walks kind of bent over, like almost like Gollum-ish. Yeah. But not. I mean, he's not a bad-looking person. He doesn't look like Gollum. No. I wonder if he's going to listen to this podcast.
I mean, there's only nice things to say about him. But,
maybe. Okay. He was my teacher at the Santa Monica Zen Center. So he was his Zen name is Yoshin Sensei, and then he got promoted to Roshi. So it's Yoshin Roshi. And he was the tip of the spear. He was the founder of the Santa Monica Zen Center. I was invited. It's kind of a funny story. I was invited in by my friend Scott to come on a Sunday morning. They would start you off by teaching you meditation. I didn't do any meditation at that point.
That's Scott Zagarino?
Scott Zagarino, yeah.
Wow.
They would teach you I think it was about 30 minutes, and then you would stay for the service. And so everything was fine. They're wearing robes, and there are little mini statuettes of Buddha, and there's some incense. So it's for me never been any place like this. It's a temple in the city of Santa Monica, basically. It's very nondescript. Yeah. And like you walk in the door, and to your left is Kuan Yin, and it was beautiful. Once, but I didn't really know what it was. I had no idea what any of this was. So the service starts, and they go through a ceremony where they're beating a drum, and they're doing the Heart Sutra, and they're chanting the Heart Sutra. Well, chanting was about as far away from normal's not the right word. Chanting to me was one step into being led into a cult.
It's a pretty big step into
it was a huge step. I didn't have any idea. Scott didn't prep me at all what was going to happen.
Do they give you the lyrics?
Yeah, they give you the lyrics.
Okay.
And so you're chanting, I don't really remember how Paramita, Prajna, Paramita. I don't know. It's a long thing. Okay. And there's drums, and there's instruments playing, and everybody's chanting. Okay. Like, okay. The only thing they didn't say was Hare Krishna, and they didn't have that going on. And the people were normal. So I was in a really weird vibe. These were not like strange people.
Yeah, that's partly why I said the weird thing, like, tell us how Bill looked. Because and I think I know the answer to this, but correct me. How did he pay the bills?
He works construction.
Exactly.
He's a general contractor and a very talented carpenter.
Exactly. And I had this moment. I didn't have a lot of interaction with him, but when I heard the backstory and a little bit of, this is the reason why I'm asking about him, I knew that much. And I see this person, and I'm like, what? He's like in his 50s.
Yep.
smallish Caucasian guy in jeans.
he's
with
he's like Jesus. He's a
That's
carpenter.
exactly what I thought. I was like, you got to be kidding me, dude. The Zen master is a carpenter.
That's right.
What?
Makes no sense.
Like, that's not. And
Come
you're like,
on.
no, it's legit.
Right.
You know, he had like the carpenter pencil in his ear, probably.
Always. Yep.
Or whatever.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
So I'm in there, they're chanting away and they're doing the thing. And then they have a period of sitting meditation. It's a 20-minute period of sitting meditation. And there's bells and incense going and the whole thing. And I'm trying to do what they taught me in the meditation, to count your breath and to be, to quiet my mind. My mind's going a freaking zillion miles an hour. And then they get up to do something called kinhin, which is a walking meditation. And everybody lines up. You turn like 90 degrees to your right. While I'm having reminiscing the Marine Corps, column right march. Right. And we start doing the very slow walk, and you're supposed to be meditating while you're walking. And then they go into a fast walk. Well, the fast walk, it's fast. And you're following, one after another, like follow the leader around this big circle around the inside of the Zendo. I go around this thing like twice, and I'm like, this is fucking whacked. I'm out of here. And I just kept walking, and I walked right out the door. I put my shoes on. I'm like, I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I don't know what just happened, why I'm here. I'm out.
Does that come with public shame, or how does that work?
I never stopped to find out. I mean, I didn't talk to anybody afterwards. Scott laughed at me. It was pretty funny because we were friends.
Okay.
And I was the only person that's ever done that. Like that had never happened before.
It never occurred to anybody else that they could just leave.
I mean, maybe they left before,
right.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I was the guy that just walked out the door.
Okay.
That was the beginning of my Zen training. I came back eventually.
Right. That's sort of why I asked about the shame. You had to come back.
I came back.
Me again.
Nobody, there was no shame. They didn't, I don't even think they mentioned it. It was a funny story that Scott and I used to tell.
Right.
I studied there for probably 7 years before my son was born. I would go on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings at 5 a.m. For meditation, and then and to meet with Bill. Bill was my teacher, so you'd meet with your teacher, and then Sundays would be the bigger service where there'd be all the chanting and all the stuff.
Without fully making us all Zen masters in 10 minutes here, were there parts of that experience, the learnings, where you were like, I recognize these lessons, this worldview from like parts of your past life? Or was it all new, so worldview changing?
It was very interesting. I, at the time, wasn't into anything like what I'm into now. I had read no books. Yeah. I wasn't interested in reading books. Right. I wasn't reading Buddhist books. I wasn't reading Zen books. I wasn't reading books about religion or following the path or becoming more spiritual or deepening into your own. None of it. And so my experience was this meditation and then doing koan study with Bill. And koans are these unsolvable riddles that the Zen Buddhists use to help kind of break the barrier between your ego and who you really are. But that concept was as foreign to me as, it literally was like 5 layers above my head.
So why do you go back? You're like, I'm
I don't know.
gonna beat this too.
There was some there wasn't. It wasn't a challenge. Yeah. It's interesting. There have been a few things in my life. When I met my first teacher, my first coach, her name was Mona. She was running a group. The group consisted of mostly people in recovery or who had some serious trauma issues, rape and incest and abuse and violence. And the conversation was a very deep, spiritual, enlightened conversation. It wasn't spiritual from a religious standpoint. It was spiritual from a ownership standpoint and a love standpoint and I couldn't not go back. I heard it. I went to one group and I just found, it was almost like I put my shoes on and my shoes walked me there. There was no reason for me to be there. I didn't have any trauma like that. I definitely have trauma, but nothing obvious. In fact, a lot of the people, once I got to know them, were like, Andy, what are you doing here? Like, why do you come here? You're not fucked up like we are.
Yeah.
And
you're a poser, man.
yeah, right. Exactly. Like, yeah, you should be out doing your normal thing, like the thing normal people do.
Happy because we can.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Zen Center was another one of those things. Like, I don't know exactly what kept me going. You know, as I got further down the road, I started to actually enjoy the chanting. I started to enjoy the bells, and once I understood what it, the bowing. You're not bowing to someone. You're bowing to, you're a bodhisattva. You're bowing to everyone else. You're bowing to humanity. You're bowing to yourself, and so it became a beautiful practice.
Cool. It's beautiful that you were attracted to it in a way that you can't really explain.
Yeah, I don't know. And it certainly wasn't because I was getting the koan study. I mean, I was slow at getting the koans. At least I think I was. You don't really share your notes. Yeah. Like, you go in to see your teacher, people don't really talk about where they are in the koans or how fast they're moving through. Yeah. They're very frustrating.
What do you get on number 3?
That's right. Exactly. Right. There's no talk about that.
Yeah. The bird is inside the bottle.
That's right. Crack.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's amazing. I was just really delighted by that little nugget of learning about that part of your life back then. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask you about it because it wasn't for nothing. It's obviously a big part of probably where we'll end up in our conversation with what you got going on now. But it would be interesting to kind of revisit us meeting. I don't know how much I've talked about that.
It was probably more memorable for you than it was for me.
100%. I think about
I mean, no disrespect.
No, 100%. I think about that exact fact. I was thinking about that exact fact 2 days ago because I, in some ways, in a position very similar to where you were back then. Mm-hmm. And I get emails from people that are written like there's not another person on the planet writing me an email. And that's actually how this all started. And you probably won't remember this, but I'll remind you. I wrote you an email that was way too long. Okay. About how I wanted to intern for you.
Was this before Stefan introduced us? Or did he write, maybe he might have written me an email first?
He might have. I don't know what that entailed. Yeah, all he told me was to reach out to you. So my, for the folks listening, my strength coach in college, Stefan Rocher, incredible influence in my life, awesome coach in person at the University of San Diego, told me to come see you. And I had just gotten done with a very short professional baseball career in the minor leagues. And I had this idea about being entrepreneurial. And for whatever reason, the idea of starting a gym for regular folks and treating them a bit like you treat an athlete rose to the top of my list of startup ideas. I think partly because it seemed like affordable, relative to other ideas. I think the other idea was a fire protection company my friend and I were going to do.
Protecting what?
Well, you can offer these different services for homes in San Diego that are exposed to wildfires. There's like different products or whatever. Yeah.
Like sprinkler systems? Or
but there's other products. Yeah.
Foam?
Foam is one of them.
Really?
Yeah. That's literally all I know about that.
Blankets that drop from the sky?
Yeah. Little
fire blankets.
Yeah. Drone water. No. So anyway, this idea came to the top of my list, and I said, hey, I'm going to move back to Los Angeles. Is there somebody that I could learn from up there? And he said, obviously, I should go see you. So I wrote this long email that was just so aggro, like, I'll be there at 5 a.m, and I'll clean your bathrooms better than they've ever been cleaned, and just too long-winded, too aggressive. And I sent you that email and promptly heard nothing for a long time. Okay. And I went on a trip to Europe.
You still have that email?
I gotta find it.
That'd be so cool.
That would be so fun. Yeah. I went on a trip to Europe. My mom was a flight attendant for United Airlines for 50 years, and it was at the end of. I had these perks until I was 26, where I could fly for free with her seniority. And so I think I just got done playing baseball. I'm a little heartbroken, and I went to go visit some former teammates in Europe. and I don't think I've told you this. I don't think I've told many people this, but I was very intoxicated in a bar in London, having the time of my life. And I was like, these motherfuckers haven't written me back yet. And so I went in my BlackBerry, scrolled on the little ball.
Was this in, what year do you think this was?
This was 2009.
So we had moved into the new gym.
You were in the new gym, and the reason why it took a while to get back was you guys were planning the sectionals.
Oh, yeah.
You guys were underwater doing that.
Yeah, right.
So
The one and only sectionals
that's
that
right.
ever happened.
That ever happened,
Yeah.
So I, with my BlackBerry, scroll down to this email, and I just hit send again. Just like, run it back, you know? And I think you wrote me back and CC'd Jen and was like, hey, we're doing this event. Love to talk in a couple weeks. Come up, whatever. And then I came up and met with you and Jen and all that. And there's so many funny moments about that thing that probably you don't remember. But I'm sitting here 24 years old, and I'm like, I was told to come to you because I'm going to open a gym. And you're just like, really? And
that's like somebody coming to me that says, was told to come to you because I'm going to compete in the CrossFit Games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I'm going to open a gym, and here's my idea, and I'm supposed to learn from you. And so I'd love to intern here. Can I please do that? And I remember the timing very specifically because it was about to be June. My first day was June 1st of whatever year. And you said, okay, well, we need to work out the arrangement of like how many hours of working around the gym equals like one class or something like that. And we worked out whatever that number was. And then before we wrapped the meeting, you said, one more thing. We need to work out how long you're committed to doing this because, you know, we don't want to have you be an intern for 3 weeks and then disappear kind of thing. And I said, well, I don't want to commit to too long because I got this gym I got to open, right? So I said, what about December 31st? Yeah. So 6 months, you know, and you're like, you think you're ready for that?
Like that was too long.
No, that like first of all, that I think that I'm gonna open a gym. I don't even know a thing about a thing.
Right.
And you're like, well, okay, you know. And we agreed on this 6 month thing, and
because it turned into
2.5 years.
Yeah.
Or 3 years, something like that.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is us like setting that context. Anyway, none of this would be real. I really believe this. None of what I'm doing now would be possible, especially in the way that it is happening, had I not met you. I really believe that. And I'd love to talk to you about all those details, but I do want to say that, you know, kind of publicly, that being mentored by you in a way that you probably don't realize, observationally learning from you, was a gift. And I see that because of the context that y'all had around the business. You know, if I take myself in history and just drop myself into nearly any other gym, I sort of see how that goes. You know, and I think what you were doing in the micro gym space, specifically, you know, the functional fitness space and the CrossFit space, it was rare to treat this seriously, like a business. And you did that. And so thank you. You know, I guess it's a long-winded way of saying, you know, thank you.
I mean, really, you know, it's funny. I don't think I knew any other way to do it.
The business part?
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I knew how to do business. I had to get some good people around me to help teach me how to do business. But that's not really that wasn't really the secret sauce. The secret sauce, and there wasn't a secret sauce. It was just living with integrity. It was being your word. Yeah. It was being responsible, taking responsibility, and then holding people accountable for being their word. Yeah. And that's really what we did.
Yeah, you were very clear on that. I mean, I think I have another thought about the quote unquote secret sauce we can talk about in 1 second. But when you said integrity, I have a distinct memory that blew my mind about challenges that I wasn't everywhere all the time, but I think that you were very early, if not, you were definitely the first person I saw in this space do this challenge concept. And it actually started with your personal training clients.
Yeah. It was the Petranek Fitness Challenge.
Yeah. And maybe even before I don't know the details about the Petranek Fitness Challenge, but I remember seeing these checks on your desk for like $1,000, like lots of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is that? Can you tell me?
Well, I mean, it depends. But there were some multiple scenarios in which those might have been appropriate. One was for entry fees for a challenge.
Right.
And we would use probably like 75% of the money or 80% of the money as a prize money so that there was skin in the game and there was an impetus to want to actually go for this thing. But the other was for leverage for personal training clients.
Yes. That's what I
And,
remember.
write me 4 checks, $1,000. And the minute that you don't do what you say you're committed to doing, I cash a check. It's very simple. It's not simple because it's quite hard actually to do that. I had one client. Well, I've done it with multiple clients, but usually it only took one cashing of one check.
It's an expensive mistake.
It's an expensive mistake, especially, I mean, look.
Can you divulge the type of mistake or the type of thing that would be on the line?
Well, I mean, it was a commitment to go to bed by a certain time, or the commitment to drink a gallon of water every day. They weren't hard things, but the other part was they had to report by a certain time to me that they did it, and I'm like, that's part of you got to stay awake. That was, I don't know if you remember this, but back when we did the first Whole Life Challenge, you had to record your score. I think it was by 9 a.m.
Yeah.
You had the morning to record your score, and that was it. And if you didn't record your score, you lost the day.
Yeah.
You couldn't go back. It wasn't a journal where you could go back and fill it was a very cut and dry thing. So I remember that first time I cashed a check for one of my clients. He did it, but he didn't tell me he did it. And he told, it was like, he's supposed to record in by like 8 o'clock, and it was 9 o'clock. I'm like, check's cashed. And he was pissed. He was pissed.
Yeah.
He never did it again. He never fucked up again. He
stayed your client.
He stayed my client.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't go away. He
didn't
didn't think it was fair.
Right. Yeah.
He didn't, I had a written agreement, and he still didn't think it was fair. He's like, I did the thing, but I didn't tell you. I'm like, well, that's
not the thing.
That's not the thing. It's not the full thing.
Right.
And that's the piece that is, if it's not there, you don't do that with a plane flight. You're not, if you did everything except forget that your gun is in your carry-on, or you left too late to get to the flight on time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you meant to, or you meant to take your gun or your ammunition out of your carry-on. Yeah. You didn't. And so are you being your word? And that was really a big piece of the accountability that was, and that was the kind of standard that we held people to. I loved the hold the standard that you guys use. I mean, that was really I could have used that motto back then. I just didn't. I just didn't.
Yeah, it's one of those universal truths. I think one of my favorite parts of life is finding what is true across disciplines, And so that whole conversation could have been about fitness, or could have been about relationships, or being a Marine, or, and where did you learn that? Is that something you brought into fitness from just, that's who you were?
I mean, you mentioned the Marines. Yeah. That definitely isn't part of it. I was a musician for the first 20 years of my life. There's a discipline that came with being a musician. I don't know that I learned that kind of accountability in music particularly. Certainly in the Marine Corps. Like being your word, it means a lot when it could mean life or death. I was never in that. Fortunately, I mean, it's interesting. I say, fortunately, I was never in that position. When you're in the Marines, you actually want to go use your training.
Right.
Like
I hear about that. You feel like you want to.
Yes, you want to. Now I'm like, thank God I didn't.
Right.
I wasn't. I was in the first Persian Gulf War, but that, war is in air quotes.
Right.
It was really just a surrender.
Right.
We give up. Please feed us.
Show of force kind of thing.
No, I mean it was an invasion, but the Republican Guard just handed over their weapons and said, "Please help us because we're cold and we're hungry and will you feed us?" But I think I mean the Zen Center was also a big part of that. The Zen Center was, I mean it was as close to, I mean if Bill could have set it up where it was life or death, he would have. He was that kind of teacher.
Wow.
And he held people to those standards.
That's epic.
And it's hard to replicate, right? Because you're in Venice, you're in Santa Monica. You're like, people don't operate that way.
Totally.
There's mushiness everywhere.
It's one of the harder things for me to navigate coming out of athletics. Probably a similar confronting reality coming out of your background, dealing with adults in a regular world situation, Before we talk about leadership and working in teams, and I'm just curious about some of your perspectives on that. The other thing that I think was really impactful for how y'all created so much value as an organization then was something that we say around here that I stole from you, which is this point of view that fitness is free or almost free. And you guys really changed a perspective on that. I think at the time in which I met you in the CrossFit space, it was a passion-driven, follow the leader kind of thing. You put up a website, it's $150. Why is it $150? It's $150 because every other website I saw had $150 on it. And we're slinging this secret recipe of 21, 15, 9, and you have to pay us money to get that secret workout. And it's a pretty value diminishing way to go about it. And the propaganda, so to speak, there was like, that's actually either free or very cheap. We have a website, you can steal the workout and I'll give you directions to the cheaper gym down the road. Right. You're coming here. It's actually maybe the most expensive gym in the neighborhood. We'll tell you that.
It was for sure. Yeah.
And
no towels, no sauna, no valet, none of this stuff.
You decidedly declared that this was coaching that you were paying for, and that has just so much more value than this thing. And that mental shift, almost no one was talking about that, and I don't know, it was just different. It's not what everybody else was doing, Well,
back in those days, when I first discovered CrossFit, I was just perusing the internet, looking for ways to bring my private training business onto the internet. How are people using the internet? This was in 2004. And when I went up to Santa Cruz, I called Santa Cruz, and I think Lauren picked up the phone. Right. Everybody's available because a seminar was 3 days, and Glassman taught it, and there were 12 people in the seminar, and I did my first muscle up. I've been on these forums where these people seemed like they were doing impossible feats. Right. They were selling a DVD, I remember, with Greg Amundsen and Dave Lees doing, Helen or Cindy, and you'd watch them do Helen, and they'd finish in like 7:30, and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go do that. Cool.
Then you watch 7:30 go by on your watch. You're like, why am I on the second round?
And I'm laying on the ground when I'm finished, and I looked at my stopwatch, and I'm at 12 minutes or 13 minutes, and going, what? What am I missing?
Yeah.
What did they do? How did they must have, I go back and watch it. Did they cut some elements out of it? Like, what are they doing that I can't do? And it seemed impossible. But the, CrossFit evolved in a way that I don't know that Glassman ever really anticipated evolving.
No way.
His philosophy back then was one-on-one training. if you cut your teeth working with one person at a time, and you get really good at serving one person, seeing what you need to see in a squat or in a deadlift. It's kind of what, remember my attempts to run an instructor training program? I mean, it wasn't an attempt. We did a pretty strong instructor training program, but we would use the diagrams. I'd make everybody draw up on the whiteboard, and I could walk into a room with 15 people, and within 2 minutes of people doing squats, I would know really what all the issues were, because I'd worked so much with one-on-one with people. I knew mechanics. I knew how the body worked. And, Greg used to talk about, work with one person becomes two people becomes three people. And maybe then you build up a little class, and you start to cut your teeth on, okay, now you've got to be able to adjust and train and motivate and scale, and for three people, and it's hard. And when I started, that's really what we did. I think I started with 4 classes a week, Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. or something like that.
And your progression into having your own gym was very similar to Greg's.
Yeah. I just,
you had a roster of personal.
I didn't get hired by I think he got hired by the police department in Santa Cruz. Yeah. To go up there. But, I had my private training clients, and I was trying to do CrossFit in this gym, this private training gym with a lot of geriatric clients. And it was insane. Yeah. It was very funny, actually. That's right. And there was nowhere to do it. I was constantly badgering the owner to move pieces of equipment out of the way so we had more space. I wanted a room like this,
open,
and there was no rooms like that. Nobody had bumper plates. So you couldn't find bumper plates. They didn't exist.
Yeah, rings were like $400.
Yeah,
crazy things.
It was insane.
Yeah.
Nope. It was. There wasn't this rabid group class, beat everybody else on the, even the whiteboard, the leaderboards, that I didn't think of putting leaderboards up until probably 2 years after we opened. And I didn't ever put my times on the leaderboard because I was so far ahead of what anybody else could do. It first of all, it made no sense. And secondly, if people wanted to see what I was capable of doing, just come 30 minutes before class, and I'm usually working out. Yeah. I don't need to boast by putting my name up, and I was literally the freaking leader of in every category.
I remember
it was ridiculous.
I remember seeing your stuff, Cindy scores,
but they weren't that good compared to now. I mean, they're not even close. But back then, it's just different. It's just different. I mean, for I could do 350-pound deadlift. Well, nobody was deadlifting then.
Right. Yeah.
So I was 200 pounds heavier than anybody else deadlifting. Yeah, right. So
yeah, you check that box.
Yeah.
So let's move on.
I mean, now it's a little embarrassing, it's not embarrassing. It's just, that's where people were. Yeah. That's where the world was back then. It evolved in a very fast, very, it changed the world and the landscape of fitness. Yeah. I think for the better, in some ways for the better, some ways maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that micro gym explosion, sort of led by the internet, led by CrossFit, is something that I got to be grateful for. I think it's
very grateful for.
I think that we won't go back. The people who were impacted by that time won't go back to a globo format gym experience and regress in that way. We kind of won't unknow a lot of the key lessons, like the movement selection, understanding some intensity, some variety. I don't think we'll ever go back to that. But I think that, like most things that blow up, there's some collateral damage in that,
It's very difficult too, the world is so obsessed by, hard cardio that to keep people's interest, in a world, especially in a place like Santa Monica, on constantly varied functional movement executed at high intensity with different modalities, skill development and strength development and metabolic development, all as individual focal points is very difficult. People just want to get their sweat on. They go to Orange Theory Fitness and they do the same workout every freaking time, and they do get fit. Their body looks fit, and they are fit. It's just a different fit.
It's also a dopamine thing, so you're getting a dopamine hit that feels good, and doing a heavy set of 5 and sitting in a chair for 3 minutes feels like you're not doing it right.
Right.
Right. But I am optimistic about that, actually, because I have this hunch that it's more than a hunch. We're seeing it where this legit revolution happened, whatever, 20 and 15 years ago ish. And all the people who are impacted by that are not getting younger.
Right.
Right. And so now you have science validating the strength development, hypertrophy development portions that people were exposed to back then. I mean, probably the folks who were doing Helen and Cindy in the early 2000s won't be snatch balancing in their 60s,
right?
But they're not going to forget the value of building lean tissue, and it's going to probably look less like 40-minute runs and more like more people doing some strength training, on the backs of like what we're hearing from Huberman and so on, and I think that that's going to be supported. That group will be ripe to live differently in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and I think that'll be interesting. But since then you've made big shifts in your focus, from the gym world. Before getting into what you're doing now, I want to talk a little bit about leadership, that big L word. You've seen a lot of stereotypical leadership environments, Marines and even in music, and then being an entrepreneur. Talk to me about leadership and what you've seen and how you've maybe changed your mind about what that is. Good expressions of leadership, poor expressions. When you think of your leadership.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I used to think that leadership was something that occurred when you had a group of people that you were in charge of.
Right.
And they would either entrust you to lead them, or you'd volunteer and you had to take care of them or do something to prove or show that you deserve to be their leader, and they would follow you.
Authority.
Authority. Yeah. You're the chosen leader. And maybe there are still environments, like I don't know why I flashed The Walking Dead in just when I said that, it just came up. Like, if there was some crazy thing, I'm sure leadership might occur that way again, because whoever's got the biggest gun and the biggest voice and, is going to tell people what to do, they're going to become the leader. Yeah. Right. But in the world we live in today, that's not The Walking Dead. Leadership starts in here, and I'm pointing to my chest, like in me. And authentic leadership is it emanates from within you. And so leadership is really about, and this is just walking the talk, right? It's being willing to align your thinking, your feelings, your actions, your beliefs around what you know to be true, and then having the courage to stand in that. And that's not easy.
Yeah, I was going to maybe state the obvious and ask the question, or call out the obvious, like, why does it take courage? And I think it takes courage because you might be wrong about that.
Yeah, we have this innate need to be liked.
Yeah.
We have, this fear of abandonment that makes us want to be accepted. Like as a child, one of the primary human needs is to be part of the family, be part of the clan, because you're literally it's a life and death situation, right? And so you're not willing to step out on a limb when you're 3 years old. Like, you may want to step out on a limb. You may want to scream the hell at you. And you do scream. It's not that you don't scream, but you'll make it about you if you're feeling pain. And so we make stuff about us. We make up stories about ourselves, and we spend the rest of our life living out these patterns that cause us to doubt ourselves and get in our own way, and then try to prove to other people that we're worthy and we're good enough. And it works to a point.
Yeah, it's as you're saying that, it's almost like the idealistic expression of leadership might be being able to do leadership from a comfortable place, that authentic place, because leadership as a compensation, because that's the other way where, oh, I can't wait to lead. Right. I can't wait to lead because this is a vehicle for me to be liked or to look good or whatever, right? Yeah. And so it's like there's a paradox in there where
to prove to other people that you're worthy and you're good enough, and you're.
Because I think leadership is rare for obvious reasons. It's painful and hard and risky. But then even if the line of people who are signing up for it is short, how many of those people in line are in line for some, I don't want to say nefarious, but like less than authentic reasons?
See, it's interesting. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So they might not even be able to know that that's what they're in it for.
Right.
I fall into that category. I mean, that was a lot of my value, a lot of my self-worth, from the Marine Corps to being in a fraternity in college to music some, but then my adventure racing and being sponsored by Red Bull and then CrossFit and going to the CrossFit games and having my own community and succeeding and winning. I was constantly proving my worth, my value. Like it didn't, and it never occurred to me. It's not like there was anything wrong with it. I was doing great shit for the world, and great shit for my community, great things for the people that I was serving. It didn't, I'm not making it wrong, but, there's a deeper layer
that you were subject to, that you were not, we internally here use this subject object shift language, right? Mm-hmm. So you were acting from this place that you were, from a place that you were subject to, meaning outside of your peer view. It was sort of happening to you. But now, like on the podcast, you're like, oh, back then it's so funny. Like I was doing all these things from this place that is now made objective. You can see it objectively from a distance. This was what I was experiencing, that I was, it was in a blind spot, or I was unaware of, or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, it didn't, you might have been able to tell me that, but I couldn't not.
Yeah.
It was the way I had my life organized. It was the way I had my, and this is from childhood. This happens to everybody. This is the dilemma. This is a human dilemma that we're all under. We're under a spell, and the spell has been created by us when we were, when we're in these formative years before the age of 7, and we develop a winning formula in order to overcome the negative belief that we have about ourselves. We're wrong. We're not fast enough. We're not smart enough. We're not strong enough. We're not skinny enough. We're not good looking enough. We're not in the cool enough crowd. Yeah. And it all comes from scarcity, from lack. And then we create a strategy to combat that. We go to college, we get a degree, we become an investment banker, or we become a Marine, or we become the Marines. For me, like, it wasn't good enough for me to be in the Air Force, or to be in the Coast Guard, or I could have chosen. In fact, I was in the Navy when I first went to college, and halfway through college, I'm like, that's not good enough for me. I'm going Marine Corps. I had to take the hard route. Yeah. There was something I had to prove, and that was part of my winning formula, my winning strategy to prove. I don't know that I ever looked at it. I know that I didn't look at it like I was trying to prove it to anybody else. I was really trying to prove it to me.
Right.
And the funny thing is, because you're looking at it through the lens of lack, you can never gather enough proof, ever.
Right.
So you're looking through the lens of lack. Everything's lack. So the minute you succeed,
You just notice how
you
much
move on to the next thing where you're lacking. Yeah, that was great over there, but you're not a pianist.
Right.
You're not a great golfer, and your friends can golf. Maybe you should get out on the links, and you find another place where you're lacking.
Yeah.
It's a version of the hedonistic treadmill.
Right.
Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. It is. I mean, those are the people that I work with now that have experienced some version of that, and it doesn't mean that they're in their life is falling
Dire
apart.
straits. Yeah.
No, most of the people I work with are highly successful, highly intelligent,
Right.
but they're realizing that there's either something missing, or they're lacking a feeling of connection or depth, or they're on their fourth marriage and they're thinking maybe this is maybe this is going to be, maybe the next one's going to be number 5.
Right.
Like, why do I keep doing this?
Right.
So leadership, to go back to the original question, changes as you wake up, as you become more aware. And the only way to become more aware is to have an instinct, to wake up to it, to have someone shake you, or life shakes you, like, like you have a stroke, or you have like a heart murmur, a health scare. That's a big one that wakes people up.
It's unfortunate that a lot of these transformative growth moments, like the disconfirming information, is delivered in tragedy.
Yep.
It's external. This strategy that you're talking about works until it doesn't. You realize it doesn't work anymore, or whatever. But it does seem optimistic to look at transformation on purpose, which is sort of what you're doing now with people.
Well, for a lot of people, it becomes intolerable.
Too painful to.
It's the anxiousness, or the worry, or the fear, or the exhaustion. It's the exhaustion of trying to hold it all together, or like of the exhaustion from the control, or the illusion of control. You think you've got everything handled, and you see this everywhere, is people who are holding their lives together with such tightness that there's no room for, there's no trust, there's no faith. I have faith. Yeah, I have faith in me. As long as I can touch it and feel it and hold it and put it on my schedule, I've got faith. And control it. That's not faith. That's control.
Did you step into this level of awareness around that on purpose? Is there a specific inflection point? Did you realize it didn't work for? How does that go?
Yeah.
If that feels fair to talk
there are a
about.
bunch of totally. I'm an open book. There are a bunch of inflection. The Zen Center, you could say, was an inflection point. My teacher, Mona, who I was studying with for on and off for like 12, 13 years, she died in a car accident. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in 2010.
Wow.
She was coming back from Lake Havasu, car flipped. She had talked about dying. It was very weird. She had talked to all of us about, angels, and that she was, hey guys, I'm prepping you. I might not always be here.
Come on, dude.
Yep.
God.
And I had this experience at her memorial. I had struggled quite a lot in my relationship with my wife. There were power control issues, and I had a lot of stinginess. In looking back on it, I was very, I was waiting to receive before I was willing to give, especially with patience, with compassion, with empathy, with love. If she gave it to me first,
We're on. Yeah.
It's great, easy.
Yeah.
But ask me to do it first, forget about it.
Okay.
And I went to Mona's memorial service, and there were about 350 people there. And I had this kind of epiphany. The love doesn't run out. It just gets bigger. Like it's like because if Mona was this place or this person, like almost like home in my own heart. I could go to her with anything that I did. If I had committed murder almost, I could have gone to her and it would have been okay. She would have made it okay. Like it was just this angelic figure, mother-like figure. And I realized in that memorial, this is everybody's experience. Like 350 motherfuckers here, like not just me. How the fuck is she doing this?
Calculator out. You're like, how much love is it?
Totally.
Jesus Christ.
And I just thought, what am I waiting for?
Yeah.
I mean, I literally had that phrase, what am I waiting for? And I was driving home, and I knew about this school called the University of Santa Monica. I joked about it before. I called it the love school. Like, I don't need that. Like it's
fake school. Yeah.
I literally called them on the way back. It was a weekday. The Memorial Day was on a weekday, and they were there, and I asked for the application, and I filled an application, and I was in the school like 2 months later.
Wow. What was the course called, or what?
It's a master's degree program in spiritual psychology.
Okay.
And I remember telling the story. I didn't really know why I was there. This is another one of those. Yeah. My feet ended up walking me into the thing that I needed to be in, but I didn't really know why I was there. I didn't have some ulterior motive. Wasn't planning on being a life coach or being a therapist. A lot of people are in that program, either are therapists already or are trying to become therapists, and they want a deeper understanding. And I just knew I had to be there. And then I didn't use it. I mean, it showed up in the way I spoke to my staff, I guess, at the gym. I sold the gym and moved into the Whole Life Challenge, and I used it in my personal life. My relationship still was rocky, but it slowly got better. I was able to show up with more loving, more patience, and because I was doing it with myself, and not just trying to do it for Julia. Yeah. But then in 2019, the Whole Life Challenge had a big hiccup in the enrollments. We had been growing 20% year over year. We were anticipating 2,000 people in the January challenge in 2019, and we had 15,000 people. Whoa. And I think the world kind of caught up to challenges. They had the ice bucket challenge, and they realized with a private Facebook group, you could challenge anybody to anything for free, like in Facebook, And I tried to make a lot of changes in a very short amount of time. I gave myself like a 3-month window to turn it around internally. Yeah. 2 employees left, quit. That meant a lot to me. I had deep everybody I've always worked with, I've had deep relationships with, and that was very difficult. And then I had my first panic attack.
I don't think I ever knew that. I don't think we've ever talked about that.
I don't think so. No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was up in Banff at a conference, and I was actually talking back and forth with Nikki, and because Nikki was on my team. Yeah. Nikki was one of those people that were hugely important. Right. And thought I needed to go to the hospital. Thought my heart, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'd studied all this. I'd studied panic attacks and anxiety, but it's nothing like going through it. And then I had several more, and I went through a year basically of, there was a 2-month period where I was afraid to leave the house.
Wow.
Which is weird. Yeah. It's given all the stuff I've done in my life.
I was going to say.
It's very weird. I couldn't separate my thinking about life from reality. And my thinking was, my life is being flushed down the toilet. And I was ending up homeless underneath a bridge in Venice.
Like catastrophizing and
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was a process, it was one of the best things that ever happened because it gave me the ability to relate in an entirely new way to the struggle of life that most people. I'd never had that kind of struggle. Any struggle that I had was self-imposed.
Yeah.
I joined the Marines.
Yeah.
I did the adventure races.
Right.
I did a 400-mile race. I
Signed up
I
for all
chose
that
it.
stuff, yeah.
CrossFit. I signed up for CrossFit. I do Murph, and it's fun.
Yeah.
I never had an experience where I couldn't stop the pain, couldn't stop the fear, couldn't stop the worry and the doubt. I couldn't just go to bed, get a good night's sleep, take a couple aspirin, and wake up in the morning, everything's okay.
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
No. And then I took a leave of absence from Whole Life Challenge. Michael ran the Whole Life Challenge, and when I tried to come back, I just couldn't. I couldn't come back in the same way. I was kind of the voice and the face of the Whole Life Challenge, and it was enough to just handle me. Like I couldn't handle the emotional responsibility of handling a big group and a community. And that's when I was like, I got to go. I got to leave Whole Life Challenge. I left. I had spoken with Carolyn Fryer-Jones, who was a really big influence. She was my coach, and she had started a school called the CFJ Coaching School. And it was really a school about the business of coaching, not how to be a coach.
She's really good at what she does, huh?
She's really good.
Yeah.
She's really good. She's patient, she's kind, and she's a bulldog.
Yeah, I gather that.
I've been thrown under the bus quite a few times, but partly because I've known her. She was one of my early members of the gym. She was a member in like 2006.
I remember coaching her a little bit.
Yeah.
Being very intimidated.
She's all of like 4'11", or I don't know how tall she is, but she's tiny.
Very tiny.
But I went to her school, and I just thought, okay, maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of imposter syndrome, but I thought at first, am I going to be a health coach? Am I going to do fitnessy type stuff? And then the more I got into it, the more I realized that the stuff that just keeps pulling, that my shoes keep walking to, is this deep, soulful connection with who we really are. Like this deep inner knowing. I mean, my wife, Julia like shakes her head every night. I'm somewhere on YouTube watching some video with, my latest one. I just discovered this teacher whose her teacher was Papa G, and she goes by Ganga G, and she's got like
being married to you would be insane.
It's insane.
Like, you got to see what I found over here.
Every night I'm watching these. I'm like watching. It can be too much, because I think some of the pursuit of it holds you from actually finding it. So that's my challenge.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah.
A lot of people who listen to podcasts are doing that right now.
Yeah, right.
You're podcasting yourself to death.
But I'll tell you what, during that year that I went through, like if anybody's listening and going through a hard time, YouTube was my savior.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to it's cliche and it seems silly, but it's not silly. Yeah. Tony Robbins.
He's good.
It's fantastic. Listening to his old stuff, downloading audiobooks of his.
Yep.
Just, I remember his incantations. Every day and every way I'm getting stronger and stronger. And I would go on a walk in the morning and I repeat that over and over every day and every. Cool. Didn't really believe it.
Right.
And then I put on a Rocky themed playlist. Every day and every way I'd put my hands up over my head, and I fake it till you make it.
Right.
And
that's incredible.
Didn't feel good, but I was doing it.
Yeah.
He talks about shifting your
state through
your state.
Physicality.
Yeah, like he does that with a fire walk. And but yeah, it was Tony, it was Joe Dispenza, it was Bruce Lipton, it was there were a few others that were really instrumental in helping me wake up. And I think that I'm still in process. And then I got into psychedelics. So that's a whole, I haven't gone there.
Too.
That's a whole nother, that happened in 2020.
Yeah.
That happened in 2020. And it took me a while to get up the courage.
Yeah.
Because I was a drug-free.
Yeah.
Other than, I mean, it's funny that we don't consider alcohol a drug.
Right.
But I was drug-free.
Yep.
And thought that all drugs were, we're going to create remember the eggs frying on the frying pan?
Yeah. This is your brain on drugs.
Every drug.
Yeah.
Cocaine,
Totally.
LSD,
Same. They're all the same.
mushrooms, they're all the same.
Same egg.
And so it took me like a year and a half reading books, listening podcasts, listening to Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss.
It's
movies.
a good way to do it. Slow walking into that. So it seems. I think as we get close to wrapping, I want to learn a little bit more about your coaching, and the most truthful way to talk about this would be to not to pretend like I don't know you, and not to pretend like we don't have all the conversations that we have, and all of that. I think we'll see where this goes. I think an interesting way to maybe look at this is there's a couple things going on. In some ways, not to make us the same person, but I'm probably living a life not that much unlike a life that you've lived, in history. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably making a lot of the same mistakes you've made, and I'm not yet to the places that you are, and all of that. So however you want to take it, I'm just curious about coaching the classics, coaching the classic issues that you deal with, and not to diminish the specifics of the people that you work with and all the cool stuff that you do. But I would imagine there's themes there. Yeah. I would imagine that I'm playing the hits,
Everybody is.
So
I mean, we've already talked about a lot of it. I think that we're living in a world inside of which we're asleep. Mm-hmm. We don't realize we can't see. We've agreed to be in this world to you could say to remember who we really are, to heal trauma, to experience our humanity, the fullness of our humanity. And we don't know that the source of our trauma is us, is our ego, is the formation of our protector controller, our ego. And so, whether it's someone who's dissatisfied in their relationship, or someone who is struggling at work, or someone who has everything and feels like the only thing that's going to satisfy them is more. Like, it's a big one today. Everybody wants more. It all comes back to this separation between that first of all, that we are different. I'm different from you. That there's a difference between us, and separation from who our oneness with ourselves. Like we don't. It's all an illusion. It's difficult to explain, really. I think that all of the troubles that people are going through in their life are a result of your mind trying to predict, evaluating the past and predicting the future. Right. You're bebopping back and forth between the past and the future. Like, you're thinking 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. 95% of them you're not aware of. You're just thinking them. And evaluating, predicting, evaluating, predicting, evaluating, predicting, evaluating, predicting. Well, I mean, I'm sure you've heard teachers say this, or it's been said and written in books. There's no such thing as the past. And there's no such thing as the future. The only thing that there is the now, because the now is where the past lives. If I think of something that happened in the past, where am I thinking of it? I'm thinking of it now. Right. There's no place called the past, and there's no place called the future. Mm-hmm. And it's an avoidance mechanism for allowing you to find that part of you that has always been there, has never wavered. It's been watching all of this. And that's the true self. That's the soul. That's the seat of consciousness. And while the work that I do is very practical, like that part doesn't sound very practical. Like, what the fuck do you do with that?
It would be a helpful foundation to embody,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in that way it is practical.
It's helpful to know, like, oh, you mean when I'm feeling anxiety, it's just a thought.
Right.
It's not you.
I'm not anxiety.
You are not anxiety. You are not your thoughts.
Yeah.
What, like one of the concepts I share with people is, what if your brain is just a machine that's designed to think thoughts? And it has nothing to do with you. Like, you have to almost picture your brain sitting over here on the table. What if it's just doing its thing, just like your eyes are seeing? You can't stop your eyes from seeing unless you close them.
That's a visual example of the subject-object shift that I mentioned earlier. Because if I'm subject to my thoughts, meaning I'm swimming in them, I don't see them as separate of self.
Yep.
But putting them far enough away to where I can observe them makes it now objective.
Yes.
Right. That is the practice of that.
Yeah, right. And if that's the case, then, and my mind is thinking anxious thoughts, I can then choose. See that separation, which is where meditation is so helpful, is it just creating space? Like, I get to choose, I'm not going to, yeah, that's great. That's not true. That's not true. My life, I'm not going to end up underneath a bridge in Santa Monica. That's not true. Okay, I hear you. I know you keep thinking it, but it's not true. Okay, it's not true. And just that space creates some relief. And from that point, then you get to start to create, because we're already creating. We can't not be creating. If you don't think you're creating, look at your life. You've created it, whether you think you have or not. Whether you've been aware of your creation, exactly how it is. Another thing that I like to say is, you're always winning the game you're playing. Okay. You can't not, even if your life is miserable. Yeah. That's the game you're playing. You created it. Your thinking created it. Your way of being, not your fault, just the way it's happened up until now. And when you wake up to that, it's very powerful, because you start to realize, I don't want to get better at playing the same game. I need a new game. Yeah.
And you did that. That's really,
I need a new game.
Yeah. And that's a very high agency way to look at it, which is to sort of bring this around to the leadership conversation that we're having around what hold the standard means. It's not just like this sort of eyewash thing you put on a t-shirt. It's kind of acknowledging the space, and if you can acknowledge it, you have this choice. You use the C word, choice, which is a high agency way to live, and I think a lot of people are suffering in a way that doesn't feel like they're enrolled in what to do about that.
Well, you don't have choice if you're not aware.
Right.
It's like when I was doing all the things that I was doing in order to prove that I was worthy, I didn't have choice. I thought I had a choice. You would look back and think, what do you mean you didn't have a choice? I chose to open a gym. I chose to join the Marines. Yeah, but I was running. There was a machine that was running me. I had a script that was playing that was, I really didn't have a choice. I only have a choice once I'm aware of the script. Once that object gets far enough away and I can see and I create that space, now I have choice. And that is the epitome of being empowered, because it changes the way you relate to yourself, changes the way you relate to your mother-in-law, changes the way you relate to your boss, changes the way you relate to your wife and your job and your kids. And suddenly, things like joy and happiness and patience and kindness and love, they're your birthright. They're already there. when all the other stuff's in the way, it's shrouded in clouds, kind of like the overcast sky here in Venice. It is, it's always there. And it's never not been there.
Yeah. It seems like this shift, and this is where we'll end. You know, I think the heart of what makes your coaching really impactful and important and timely with the suffering that humans experience in the world is, if I'm sort of bathing in the type of lack of awareness that you're talking about, there's a couple ways to shift out of that. One is to experience some external event that's going to force me to learn this lesson. Wouldn't recommend.
You can help it. No.
Wouldn't be my first choice.
No, that's not a good choice. But a lot of times we don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice. But for the people that could experience this shift on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
I think the paradox of this conversation is it's not a matter of more information,
No.
right?
No. We're way over informationized.
That's part of like our
Data and numbers.
We're in the
and
information age and we're suffering. You know,
Yeah.
it's like not for a lack of information. This is a lot of our propaganda around adaptive leadership, being able to see that not all of our problems are technical, meaning like solvable with more information. And so separate of the techniques that you use with your people, I think it does work because it isn't going about it from a technical perspective. It is truly adaptive work, which is disconfirming. You know, can you break this pattern of thought that isn't serving anymore, isn't working anymore?
Yeah, people are very hooked by wanting the 5 steps, like the things to do. Okay, Andy, this is great, but what do you do? What are your recommendations for things listeners could do, right? What could I give you? The first step, this is with every person I work with, you've got to wake up. You got to see. And so start to look at your own life. Start to look at the automatic patterns. Start to look at the judgments, at the way you look out at the world and make judgments, you know, about that person walking down the street, or about the weather, or about your wife or your girlfriend, or about yourself. The way you look in the mirror and when you look at yourself naked.
Yeah.
Start to wake up to the way you are engaging in the world. And there is no 5-step process. I wish there was. I mean, if you don't meditate, I would say start meditating. Start with 5 minutes a day. You know, like creating that space, not to accomplish something, just to start to practice. You know, one of the ways I like to think of it is, you've got this mind that's out there thinking 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. What if you could just ignore it? What if you just let it do its thing and just ignore it? And that's a skill. You can practice doing that when you meditate.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. I mean, I do 20 minutes of meditation and I forget that I'm even meditating. Like I'm so down a rabbit hole in terms of my thoughts. Like, what the fuck just happened? Oh, I'm meditating. It's just a process, you know, and the world, I think we're waking up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first time in history where we've had enough security and safety. I know the world doesn't feel that safe right now, but
to reflect.
You're not out hunting for your meal.
Totally.
You're not having to do the things that we had to do even just 150 years ago to survive. You've got the room to contemplate this stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
And so there is an evolution happening.
Episode 2, we'll talk about the yugas, and you'll walk us through the whole thing. Is there anything else that you'd like the people that are listening to us chat know, and also include where to get involved with what you got going on?
I just want to say thank you, because I feel like the greatest honor for me is to see someone carrying the torch that I started. And I didn't even know I was starting a torch, but I'm grateful that you're here, that you're doing what you're doing, that I can walk in here anytime and feel at home, and that you're affecting the world the way you do. And you're doing it better than I did, which is pretty fucking cool. And it's not a competition.
Right.
I know that. I know what I said, and I know you're not trying to beat me, and I wasn't, that's not self-deprecating.
Yeah.
It's just, I see what you're doing, and it's wonderful.
Well, thank you. And every time we hang out, I'll try to remind you how much you mean to me. And I know I didn't, I didn't probably say much back then, but I was watching everything, and I really, absorbed a lot more than you'd think, and it's with me every day. So thank you.
Yeah. Cool. And then, you want to find me? I'm in the process of trying to redo my website, although I'm not so good at that process. But my website is it's andypetranek.com.
Yep.
And I'm on all the socials, Andy Petranek. It's very basic. I'd like to do videos on Instagram where I'm just kind of contemplating things, and so that's kind of fun.
Cool.
But, hey, find me there.
Yeah, get a coach. And most of you already have a front squat coach, so get a different kind of coach. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
All right, guys, that's the episode with Andy Petranek. Andy and I are still close to this day, largely because, frankly, I'm a better person when I'm around him. As you heard in that episode, his endless curiosity is such a driver in his life and his development that I can't help but kind of draft behind his growth. So next week, we got a big one. We have my college baseball head coach, Coach Rich Hill. And I can easily say I've been more directly influenced by Coach Hill than any other mentor in my life. I can't wait to share this full conversation with you that we had for season 1, because, frankly, I'm on a group text with teammates of mine from 20 years ago, and we quote this guy every day, every week, and there's so much to take from it.
We just saw something with Tyler Skaggs and the Los Angeles Angels. Now, everybody, was on the same page that night that they, threw a no-hitter. So it was this heightened awareness which led to that heightened focus, which can be termed commitment, to this one goal. Nothing was in anybody else's mind about being the best performer that night that they could be. And the level of play was off the chart.
Right.
So that speaks to the power, right, of mindset.
Also, if you haven't seen it yet, holdthestandard.com got a facelift. So jump over there for all kinds of ways that you can expand your leadership capacity. I really appreciate you guys listening, and please choose leadership.